My name is Barbara. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Diva S. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the new subscribers. Welcome to everyone who's been with me for a while. Thank you so much for coming back to my little corner of the internet. I have a lot of new subscribers in the last few months, and so I thought maybe I would introduce myself in the hopes that you did not go back to the first episode because it wasn't very good. I mean, it wasn't terrible. I put it up. I left it up. It's still there. But I was very nervous. My daughter called me after I put it up. She said, "Mom, nobody who doesn't know you somebody who doesn't know you might not know you were nervous, but you were really nervous." I was really nervous. And it's funny because I'm not nervous at all talking to you now. Because, I don't know, I feel like I'm talking to one person, and for the most part I am, unless you watch me in groups. Last summer, I introduced some singers in a small concert. There were about 200 people at this concert. I was terrified. I could barely stand up. My legs were shaking. It was like the cartoons where the knees shake when somebody's nervous. It was exactly like that. I was so shocked. I thought, I'm on the internet. I do this all the time, If you were all in a room here, this would not be happening. Well, actually, that's not true. I bet you it still would. They were strangers. And they weren't knitters. I did get up and talk for 5-10 minutes at a knitting retreat a few years ago, and I wasn't nearly as nervous as I was last year. So that's the knitter part. Anyway, I am retired. I live in southeastern Pennsylvania in almost the most western suburb of Philadelphia. If you go much further west from us here in Lancaster, and I guarantee you they do not consider themselves a suburb of Philadelphia. So I'm right on the edge of the Lancaster County. I'm in Chester County. But when we want to get liver for the dogs, we go to Shady Maple, and there are, buggies parked outside. That's how it is around here. I've been retired for 5 years. 5.5 years now. I was very lucky to be able to retire early. In my working life, I was a systems analyst and project manager for a policy research company. Policy research, if you're not familiar with that, is doing studies to find out if public policies are working. So when governments or foundations want to spend money trying to fix a problem or address an issue, they often do a study to find out if what they're doing is actually effective. So the company that I worked for is a top leader in its field, and we've studied all kinds of stuff. Education, a lot of education. We study whether charter schools work. We study abstinence education. We studied when I was there. It's been 5 years. We studied. We were one of the foremost experts in food stamps, which is now SNAP. They want to know, does giving food stamps help people's food security? The answer is yes. It's one of the most effective programs we have. Things like that. So lots of health, lots of education. Back when we had welfare, we studied welfare. So anyway, that's what I was, the industry I was in, but I was in charge of different projects, getting the computing around collecting their data so that they could do the analysis and find out if things worked or not. So I knew all the questions, didn't necessarily know the answers. Had to read the reports to find those things out. So anyway, that's what I did when I worked. I also had a very long commute. Dennis and I work about 70 miles apart. When we were first married, I'm married. Dennis is my husband, And I have 2 children who live far away. My son took my granddaughters to Florida, but I saw them this past 2 weeks, and it was wonderful. They stayed with us, and it was so nice to see them and hug them. It was wonderful. But they live in the Tampa area, and my daughter lives in Mississippi. So our kids are spread wide. But we have 2 dogs. Pearl, who's a 2-year-old German Shepherd, who's a rascal dog and the best dog ever. I mean, the most amazing dog. And we have a new puppy who you might see running around behind me at some point, Maze, who is a 4-month-old Newfoundland Poodle mix, who is completely adorable and growing so fast. We feed our dogs raw, and right now Maze is eating about 2 pounds of meat a day. And not surprisingly, she's growing. She goes to puppy kindergarten so that, she knows that she has to sit to greet somebody, and she, because she's probably going to be 100 pounds is our guess. We're hoping for 90, because but Pearl's 90. Pearl's a big girl. Okay. I've been knitting for 6.5 years. I started knitting in January, I think, of 2013. Might have been February. I started knitting 3 days before I found out I was going to become a grandmother. So that helped focus my early knitting, and that was good, I mean, baby blanket isn't a terrible thing as your first project. I started knitting because I've told this story before, so I'll just tell it really quickly. Dennis's family all go to the Outer Banks for a week in the fall. And there's a lovely knitting shop called Knitting Addiction in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. And I was there 7 years ago. With my sister-in-law. We were making jewelry at the time, and we thought, maybe there are some cool yarns that we can incorporate into our jewelry. So we walked into Knitting Addiction, and I just went like, oh my gosh, I want to own all this yarn. And I didn't knit or anything. So I said, I got to learn how to knit so I can own this yarn. So so yarn was the reason I started knitting, so I could own yarn. So so it's not surprising that I have a very large stash, because, so I don't feel bad about having a large stash. I was feeling bad about spending so much money and not knitting the beautiful yarn I had, which is why I'm currently in the middle of a yarn no-buy year, and I'll talk about our make-along around that in a little while. I am sitting outside. It's going to be a hot day, and I'm already got the gnats around me, so if I start, it's because I've got bugs on me. And it's early in the morning. What time is it? I mean, it's early for me. Wrong thumbprint. It's 8:05. This is my first cup of coffee. So anyway, I taught myself how to knit using YouTube, and a woman who I worked with, who's a knitter, hi Cheryl, turned me on to Ravelry, so I found the whole Ravelry thing back very quickly after I started knitting. And I've been knitting for 6 or 8 months, and I discovered knitting podcasts. And it wasn't 6 or 8 months. It was probably, because this podcast, I've been doing this for, it'll be 3 years in September. And I had only been, 2 years. Do the math backwards. 2 years, there's Mies. Oh, there's Pearl, and there's Mies. About 2 years after I started knitting, I discovered knitting podcasts, and I was immediately taken by the idea of a podcast and started narrating my knitting and kind of what's going on in my life around my knitting as if I had a podcast. And I did that for almost a year before I got brave and started my podcast. So I am a relatively new knitter, but I I love it. I'm a little concerned because I am a serial hobbyist. Right before I knitted, I was a lamp worker, and I was a very serious gung-ho lamp worker for 5 years, and then I kind of burned out. That's why my podcast is called the Flame and Fiber Podcast. I'm also a lamp worker. I have a beautiful, I shouldn't show you this because it's all mossy. I've got to clean my shed. I have a beautiful studio there. Oh, and check out my new clothesline. Beautiful studio in that shed. And I am starting to feel like getting back to lamp working, but I have a tendency, the 5 years before that I was playing poker, and then, as soon as I started lamp working, the poker went by the wayside. As soon as I started knitting, the lamp working went a little bit by the wayside. So I'm just hoping that the knitting doesn't go by the wayside, because I really do enjoy it, and I love the product of my knitting. I love the sweaters. I love what I've made. So that's a little bit of an impetus to continue, because the problem with lamp working is I make beads, and after a while, I have jars and jars of beads as centerpiece decorations, because what are you going to do with all those beads, especially the ones that aren't that good? Anyway, so now I am a knitter. I do have a granny stripe crochet blanket, so I'm the tiniest little bit of a crocheter. I can do a double crochet, which in British terms is a single crochet. That's what the whole blanket is. I can do it, and I enjoy doing it. And I was gonna look up my thing. I'll look it up and tell you. And I have, since I have spoken to you last, I have taken up, come on, really? Oh, there it is. I've started doing counted cross stitch. Okay. Holy moly, my machine is really slow. On June 20th. Today is June 29th. Oh, today is June 29th. This is episode 72. June 29th, 2019. So I have been doing counted cross stitch for 9 days. Because I posted on Instagram when I got home from the cross stitch store. So I will tell you about my cross stitch in the course of events today. I'm sorry for any wiggling. This is a little bit of a wiggly setup. I'm just sitting at my table in my on my deck, but this works out good. The girls need to be outside. They're more likely to be outside if I'm outside, and I have a lovely backyard. So, and it's not too high yet. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning in Pennsylvania. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry for you people in Europe. Apparently Dennis was telling me that the temperatures are in the hundreds, and I know that a lot of people, most people don't have air conditioning. You must be really feeling it. So I hope you are staying cool enough and safe, because that's brutal. That's brutal. We will be inside for most of the day today. Dennis and I, when we get up in the morning, well, what are your plans for today? We're retired, so, we just do whatever we want. We're not ambitious people. So when I got up with Maze, I have the early stint with Maze so that she isn't in the crate too long at night, and so she can pee. So I get up early, and Dennis stays in bed for a couple more hours, and then he stays up late. It suits us. But he rolled over as I was getting Maze and says, my plans for today are to lay around and feel sorry for myself. And I said, okay, that sounds good to me. Because yesterday, when he was putting away the lawnmower, he pinched his finger in the garage door and tore the whole tip of his finger off. It was hanging by the tiniest, like 2 millimeters of skin and this huge chunk. He had 12 stitches yesterday in the afternoon. So he's got a thing on his finger like this big. Maybe I might be taking a picture of it when he gets up and editing it in so you can see his finger. But he's got this giant thing and in 12 stitches, and that happened yesterday afternoon. So that was not a good day. Oh, and now I know why people have emergency sock knitting in their car, because hello, he's he walks in the door with a bloody shirt, holding his hand, saying, Put the puppy in the crate. We have to go to the hospital. I didn't take my phone. I didn't take my knitting. I put the dog in the crate, and I didn't have a bra on. My clothes were dirty. I looked terrible. 3 hours we were there. I could have got some knitting done. That's okay. He's okay. And apparently the anesthetic that they put in his finger is very long lasting, because it still doesn't hurt, he said. So that's good. All right. So this is me. If you want to know anything else, you're welcome to ask. We, since we retired, we've done a lot of traveling and been very lucky to be able to do that. I haven't done a very good job of talking about our Russia trip, which we took a Viking river cruise from St. Petersburg to Moscow at the beginning of May. It was a wonderful trip. We really enjoyed it, but I haven't really shown very many pictures. I do put my pictures on Instagram when I travel. So if you're on Instagram, you should follow me and you will see my trips. But we do not have another trip planned. We just bought the property next door to our house. And in the next couple of years, our plan is to build a house, our retirement house, and then sell this house. So we do not have, other than our week in the fall at the Outer Banks with Dennis's family, we will still be doing that. Dennis's, everybody who comes is related in some way to Dennis's parents. Dennis's father turned 102 last week. His mother is 88. So her side of the family, some cousins come and an uncle, and on his side of the family, he had lots of siblings. He's the last one now, but a lot of cousins from that side of the family come, and some friends who are like family come. So we're filling 12 bedrooms this year, so that'll be fun. I expect it'll be the last time that we do this, because his dad is getting very, very tired. And it's an 8-hour drive to North Carolina, and it's a real struggle for him to make that trip. But I mean, it's possible they won't go, but I'll be surprised. But anyway, that's the only thing we have planned now, our trip to North Carolina, which we always enjoy. All right. I mentioned the make-along. Leslie of Not Quite Enough Yarn and I are doing a year-long Craft From Your Stash make-along. And I'll put the hashtag down here, hashtag StashCal2019. And it's very simple rules. You have to have owned the yarn at the end of 2018, and you have to have started the project in 2019. Easy peasy. That's all. I don't care how big the project is, as long as you use stash to make it, it counts. There, I have an FO thread and a chatter thread in the Flame and Fiber podcast Ravelry group, and I am pulling prizes every quarter from. I'm pulling a yarn prize from the FO thread and a pattern prize from the chatter thread, and I have done that. Now, the yarn prize for the FO thread is Cory Sock from Flying Goat Farm in the colorway Valentine Blush. I bought this yarn to make a sweater for my Isabel, who is my oldest granddaughter, who will be 6 in August. And I made this. This is the Doverfell sweater, which is so cute and lovely. When they arrived here, and I talked about this on my last podcast because they were here for a day before they went off. It was 60 degrees here and they were cold. And so Isabel wore my sweater and loved it. She didn't want to take it off even when it got hot. I was so excited. And I had to wash it after she left because it had chocolate on it and whatever. It washed so beautifully, and I just washed it in the washer on a regular wash, and I dried it on low, which I dry all our clothes on low, except now I've got a clothesline. But anyway, so I dried it on low. It came out beautiful. So this is how that yarn knits up, if you're wondering. I also knit myself a pair of socks out of this yarn. I obviously overbought. So I have one more skein left, and that's going to B.N. Bullock. Beverly from Clarksville, Tennessee. B.N. Bullock. I hope you like pink. Now, your favorite color, according to your thing, is green, but I hope you like pink because this is the prize. And if I get into the studio, I'll send you some stitch markers too. So B.N. Bullock, please message me on Ravelry that you got this and send me your address, your snail mail address, and I will send you your prize. So congratulations, and thank you so much for participating in this make-along. And in the chatter thread, and that was post number 27. So it was an early post, that one. Post number 191 on the chatter thread, and that was Linda Dawn 64. And that's Linda from Wilmslow, Cheshire in the United Kingdom. So Linda Dawn 64, Linda, please get in touch with me and on Ravelry and let me know what pattern you would like to have, because I will send it to you. And Beverly, if you really don't like pink yarn and aren't interested in this and would rather have a pattern, that's also an option for you too. If you have a pattern you'd rather have than the yarn, I'm happy to send you a pattern. So, because I know not everybody loves pink, but this yarn, I mean, this is not super soft yarn, but my granddaughter is 6 and she wore this sweater and was on short sleeves because she had summer clothes and she was tickled with it. So I'm looking forward to wearing my socks. I finished them after the winter, so I haven't worn them yet. So I can't tell you how they go. But anyway, thank you everyone who's participating in the make along with me and Leslie. I really am enjoying seeing what you've made. I've been a little bit not on the forums the last couple weeks because I've been with my granddaughters. They came with their parents. They drove up, and then so when I podcast last time, it was 2 weeks ago on Friday, they were off to visit my parents and were coming back Friday. Jason and Allison left early in the morning on Saturday, and we had the girls till Wednesday, just me and Dennis. We had a great time. We were tired. OMG. I was a single mother. I don't know how I did it. Of course, I was a lot younger. a lot younger. Oh, we were exhausted when we traded them off to the next grandparents because the kids moved to Florida and left everybody behind. So we had them for 5 days, and then we gave them to my ex-husband and his wife, who are, Grandma and Pop D, and they were there for 5 days. And then we got them back for 2 days, because originally the plan was they were going to go visit Allison's aunt and uncle for 2 nights. But her aunt has vertigo, and so she couldn't take the kids. And Dennis and I are the only set of grandparents where both people are retired. So we got them for another couple days unexpectedly, and which was fun. We went to the zoo and had a great time. And then passed them off to Allison's parents. So Jason came yesterday, presumably. I haven't seen him, and I won't I won't be seeing him because he's in Jersey. Flew in last night, and he's spending the day today and tomorrow. That he will fly the girls home, and they will see their mother, and they will be very glad. Isabel, it was too long for the girls. It was hard on them. That Isabel said, I'm going to be here all month. I said, well, you didn't come at the beginning of the month. She said, I don't get home till July. I'm like, okay. You're right. It's a long time. I'm not arguing. I'm not saying it's not a long time. So anyway. So we had a wonderful visit, but I will tell you that while they were here, and so we had them 7 days out of the 2 weeks since I last podcast, I did not knit a stitch. Because I have early session with the dog and I have to get up early. I've been going to bed earlier, and so I was going to bed with the girls. We all slept in the same big bed in the same room in our king size bed. Dennis slept in the guest room because the three of us slept in the bed, and then Maze was in the crate in that room. So I got up in the morning and took her downstairs. And most mornings I got up by myself. The girls were still asleep. So I had, you know, half an hour, 45 minutes to drink my coffee quietly with the dogs. And that was nice. But I was tired. Oh my gosh, I was tired. But I have been doing some knitting, and I started this cross stitch thing. So I'll talk about that. But I'll start with my knitting. First of all, I have my Ravelry tee. I talked about my Ravelry tee in the last episode. I really, really want to make colorwork sweaters. I want to own colorwork sweaters. This is the Ravelry tee by Caitlin Hunter. This is how far I am. I'm done with the light color, and my next row of, oh my gosh, my next row of knitting will be with my brownie color, my brownish color, and the main color of the sweater. So this is the, 2 episodes ago I went into a lot of detail about how I ended up with this color. I tried to set a natural color that was a very beautiful burgundy, and I drained all the gorgeous color out of it and got this nice brown. But brown was not what I was thinking I wanted. But I could have, I had another skein of that burgundy. We didn't match exactly, but it was close enough. And I could have used it, but I decided to use the brown. And this is going to be the color of the body of the sweater. And this is what my colorwork looks like. Didn't it turn out beautiful? I hated almost every minute of knitting it, though. That's the problem. But it turned out so beautiful. And then this is going to be the, I don't know how to hold that so that you can see it. And then this is going to be the body of the sweater. Now this peachy apricot-y color, I really like that color. I'm a little sorry I didn't switch the colors in the color work, although the peachy color is pretty prominent, so I guess it doesn't matter. On this pattern, you can see that there's just a hint of color peeking out as part of the sleeve design, and she uses the dark color here. I'm going to use the peachy color here, the apricot-y color, because I like it better. And so I'm going to see that again on this part of the sleeve. I'm going to make this sweater a little bit longer than, you know, I'm not such a cropped kind of girl, but I'm really loving that. It wasn't so bad the last few rows. I think part of my problem is my needle cord is too long. I mean, so it was like a struggle to get the stitches around. I was always dealing with it, and I was using Continental Knitter. So I was using this little gizmo on my finger and had both of the threads, both of the yarns on my left hand. Because I had this gizmo on my finger and it's attached to the yarn, it's not that easy to just take my left hand and use it to like move the stitches around, you know. And so that was also, you know, so, but I couldn't do it left-handed without this separating the yarns. I tried Kristen Lehrer's. She did a video on how to do do both hands, both yarns in your left-handed, and I couldn't quite do it her way. The sun is coming, but it's going to go up. I am under an umbrella here. So I think that's part of the problem, that my cord was too long. If it were a 32-inch instead of a 40-inch, I think I would have been happier. It would have just been less work. Oh, get a little sunshine action on that. Let's see. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I got glare on there too, so I'm not sure. So anyway, this is my Novelli tee. I have 10 more rows of 2 color work. The second color now is that's pretty, is the main color, and then I'll just go into stockinette, and then this will fly off the needles. But most mornings, not every morning, I have sat and done 1 or 2 rows out here at 8 o'clock with my coffee, with my dogs, because I can't really do anything else. I mean, even if I get just lost in thought, I have to go take it back because I make a mistake. So these are all my stitch markers with my pattern repeats. So anyway, I love how it looks. I'm going to be excited to have the sweater. I'm sad that I didn't enjoy doing the color work more, and I'm hoping that the next color work sweater I try, I will like better. I want to make color work. I love color work. The look of color work, it's, you know, I mean, that's like one of the coolest parts of knitting, right? So this is my Novelli tee. Oh, the yarn is from 2 women who naturally dye yarn, and they have a booth in Maryland, at Maryland Sheep and Wool, and they don't sell online. And I did in my episode right before Maryland Sheep and Wool tell you how to get there if you were lucky enough to go to Maryland Sheep and Wool. The other thing that I'm knitting on, oops, I gotta put that back or I won't be able to find it. The other thing I am working on is the Cityscape tank. And I saw this was one of those things on Instagram. Oh, that looks great. I lost my original pattern, which had a page of lovely color. So I don't know if you'll be able to see it very well, but it's got ribbing here, 1 by 1 twisted rib here, and then the ribbing tapers off as you go up. That's the only, you can barely see that. That's the only shaping, I think, is that rib is pulling you in, because there's lots of rib here, and as you have less rib, then your top gets bigger. I'm doing this in Sunseeker yarn by Cascade Yarns. Sunseeker. This is 47% cotton, 48% acrylic, and 5% metallic yarn. I had made a sweater for Allison, my daughter-in-law, before out of this yarn, and I, again, overbought. And I am hoping I overbought enough to make this, and I'm pretty sure I have. I'm working on this ball. Oh my gosh, what so I have this much of this ball and I have one more full skein. Should be enough. So I've started the shaping. You can see here I've started adding stockinette columns and cutting down on the twisted rib. As I said, I knit continental, so doing a 1x1 rib is no big deal. I like the look of twisted rib. I've never done a lot of twisted rib before, and I like it. Now, this yarn is acrylic and cotton, and I have no idea. Maybe I need to move. I have no idea if this is just going to stretch out of shape. Just acrylic has memory, right? I mean, you can't block it because you can't change it, right? What do I know? I'm hoping that I like this. And it's got a little bit of sparkle. I don't know if you can see that. I can see it in the reflection, but I don't know if that I'm seeing it in the picture. And so anyway, so I'm plugging away on that. So this is the knitting that I've been working on, is these two sweaters, which is not a ton. Well, where was I when last we spoke? Well, I was here. So I had, you know, I have a week where I didn't do any knitting at all. When I had the granddaughters, I didn't do anything. Okay. I think I need to readjust my... I thought the sun would be higher. So I'm going to move a little bit. Maybe 8 o'clock in the morning is too early. I've just turned a little bit to try to get out of the sun. See how that works. We're all here. So I don't know if it was because I didn't want to do the color work. The cityscape tank, I think it's going to be nice, but I'm not super excited about that. Oh, one other thing I wanted to talk about. Isabel's sweater. She loved it. Loved it. Well, I had started, if you've been watching this for quite a while, you will know that I... Oh, yay! I just found... I'm so disorganized. In this, I just found the notes from my classes from SSK, which I did not get into this year, so I am not going. But I wondered where these notes were because I was very interested in this. I must have been working... Well, this is my SSK bag from last year from the Fat Squirrel, so I must have been working on this at SSK. Okay, wow. So I haven't worked on this for quite a while. I don't think I was working on this at SSK. I think I just stuck those in the bag. Anyway, I am making the Dover felt again by Kristen Rengren for Sammy. And I had started it, and then, you know, it's possible that it's possible that I was doing this at SSK because it was hot and I got discouraged. And anyway, I ordered ribbon. I'm going to cover the zippers in the ribbon. And, or I bought ribbon. And so I had started Sammy's sweater and got discouraged because they're in Florida and don't need sweaters. And so I stopped. But I don't think it was last. Anyway, I am showing you this because I will be picking this up. I need to finish Sammy's sweater. And I'm doing the second size for her, which I should be a 2-4, I hope. Chest 25 inches. I should measure her, I guess. But I didn't, so I'm doing that. I'm doing the second, which I'm assuming equates to a 2-4. So anyway, this is next. These are the ribbons I'm going to use to cover the zippers. They're getting zippers. And I'm finding needles. No wonder I can't find any needles on things. But the problem is that I lost the ball tags, and I don't know what this yarn is. So I apologize for that, but I'm sure it's a superwash merino that will be able to be dried in the dryer, because that is the plan. So I will be probably changing bags, because this bag is definitely overkill for a size 2-4 sweater. But that's next to be picked up. You know, when I'm discontent with my knitting, I have a tendency to go out on Ravelry and start looking at patterns. So now I'm gonna stop doing that and work on that sweater. And I really would love to have one of those for myself. I want a hoodie, and this is essentially a hoodie. So in the midst of, in between the visits with the granddaughters, I was comatose practically. I was so exhausted. I was watching some of my podcasts, and the Crafty Toads have taken up cross stitch, counted cross stitch. Actually, a lot of people are doing counted cross stitch. Well, you know that because you watch other people's podcasts too. But the Crafty Toads have gotten so into it that they have changed the format of their podcast to be 1 week of knitting, and the next week it's a floss tube. So they are doing a floss tube every other week. I will not be doing that, just in case you're wondering. And then Chevy Rell, I was watching her, and she was showing her counted cross stitch and saying how much fun it was. And I was sitting there not, you know, I can't knit on my Ravelry tee when there's any kind of distraction in my house. And I guess I didn't want to knit on the cityscape, and I was just sitting there, and I realized I want to do counted cross stitch. Well, I had actually, I don't know how long ago, if it was in this house, I would be surprised, but it's possible. I found an embroidery project of mine where I was going to embroider Christmas napkins, and I had started one of the 4 Christmas napkins. And this has to be a 20-year-old project, but in the bag was a whole bunch of DMC floss and these unfinished napkins, which probably will spend their lives unfinished. So it's not like I never did any needlework. But I don't know if I've ever done counted cross stitch before. If I did, it was a very, very long time ago. So anyway, I was sitting there not wanting to do my knitting, and I went out on the internet and Googled, you know, embroidery shops or stitching shops in Chester County. And I found Just Cross Stitch in Limerick, Pennsylvania. Limerick, Pennsylvania is about a half an hour, 40 minutes from my house. It's famous in the area because that's where the nuclear power plant is in the area. And, but it's interesting because it has this cross-stitch store. It has a very nice bead store. So it's like the people in Limerick are out there doing crafts. But it's a small, you know, one person, and it had very limited hours. And I found it at 2 o'clock, and they closed at 3, and they weren't going to be open the next day. I'm like, okay. I'm going now. Actually, I'm not sure if they were open the next day. That could be a lie. But they weren't open every day. So I hopped in the car and I went. And Dennis says, you know, it's going to rain. And it poured. In, you know, British podcasts, they talk about it bucketing. It was bucketing. It was, you know, pull your car over because you can't see where you're driving kind of rain. Just, the skies opened. And, but I got there in time. I was afraid I was going to be late and miss them. But there was the owner, lovely woman, Carolyn. And I walked in and I said, I want to learn how to do cross stitch. You know, here I am. So anyway, well, the thing about cross stitch is, and the reason I've hesitated to do cross stitch is, while I find the making of the cross stitch very meditative and fun, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the finished product. I don't have, you know, I think of cross stitch as kind of a country style or a colonial style. And while my house is a colonial style house, it's not colonial in the interior. Our living room is what Dennis likes to call cluttered Victorian. You know, it's like the Victorians would travel and they would just fill their room with all kinds of stuff from their travels. And that's how ours is. We got stuff, you know. But I just couldn't picture what I was going to do with the final product of the cross stitch, because it's not necessarily my style. I mean, you know, a lot of these things are really cute and, you know, but I don't have any place to put cute. I don't have people to give cute to. So I was a little concerned about, you know, it's one thing to knit a lot of sweaters. I'm going to wear those sweaters. Okay, do I need all these sweaters? Maybe I don't need all the sweaters, but I still will wear the sweaters. But if I do cross stitch, what am I going to do with the finished product? And I wasn't picturing it, although since I've, you know, once you get into it, you learn a lot, see a lot of things. And I did see a pattern for a pillow that I'm probably would make, you know, that kind of thing. I could do a pillow. But the one area that I realized I would love to cross stitch for, and I would love the product of, is Christmas. You know, rustic country handmade Christmas is just up my alley. So I thought I'll do Christmassy things, because I would love to have ornaments on my tree. I don't have a lot of ornaments. I haven't had a tree, really had a tree in years. I had one tree year before last, Christmas before last. My friend moved to Florida and she gave me her beautiful artificial tree. We hadn't had a tree in a long time. All our Christmas tree ornaments got ruined in a flood at one point, and we never really replaced them. The kids were gone. We weren't. I decorate for Christmas, but I wasn't putting up a tree. And I always had a real tree, and so it seemed like it was more of a big deal to put up a real tree. And since I didn't have a lot of ornaments, and well, I've been collecting ornaments because I love Christmas ornaments, and people have been giving me ornaments. I've been making ornaments now, and so I decided that my cross stitch was probably going to end up having a Christmassy theme. So that's what I told her when I told Carolyn when I walked into her shop, and she showed me this. This is the Prairie Schooler, which, if you know anything about cross stitch, you've probably heard of. This is the 2019 Santa, and just cross stitch, Limerick, Pennsylvania. And how could I resist this guy with his sheep? And she's like, okay, well, I was going to keep this one for myself, but I'll order more. And she slapped a sticker on it and sold it to me, which I really appreciate because I'm really excited about it. So being the brand new cross stitcher that I am, I'm like, oh, I want to do this on linen. I mean, the only thing I know about cross stitch is what I've heard from the Crafty Toads. I mean, really, I don't know anything, but I thought this one has a lot of the background showing. This one is on Putty Khaki Davos, whatever Davos is. I have no idea. But she had linen, and so I got linen, and I started. And I've been doing cross stitch, and I've gotten pretty far. Look at this little lamb in his arms. I'm so excited. Do not look at the, oh. Well, I'm not going to have it showing like this so you can see my string went across. When last we met, I started working on his boots. So but I did the little lamb. So anyway, she sold me the flosses. There aren't tons of flosses in this one. There were 9, and so I had Dennis blow up the back of it so that I could mark things off. I needed to, you can see I have pink there. The yellow is what I've done in the prescribed color, and the pink is what I've done in the wrong color. One thing I have learned, and I'm going to tell you everything I've learned because it's been so much since I've been doing this for 9 days. One thing I learned is I'm not very good at counting. This may not be a great thing if you're doing counted cross stitch. The other thing I bought, which it turns out I don't really need, is a needle minder. Isn't that cute? It's a sheep. But since I'm just starting out, and as I said, I was watching the Crafty Toads, and they went from using a hoop to knitting in hand. And when Carolyn asked me, do you think you're going to want to use a hoop, or do you going to want to use the sewing style? And since I have been a sewer all my life for many, many years, I thought the sewing method was probably going to suit me better, since I didn't know anyway, and the sewing method was free, and the other methods would require me to buy a hoop or the frame clamps, whatever they're called, I forget. So I am pretty tickled with how this has gone. If you can see, this side of the green was where I started, and you can see through it, but I'm really kind of happy with it. Now, that being said, there are tons of mistakes, some of which you can probably just see. The scarf did not turn out as it was supposed to. My scarf and his scarf do not look the same, but they're close. So my thought is this is probably going to end up being framed. For my Christmas decorations, I collect Santas and Christmas trees. And so Santa's right up my alley. So I'm pretty happy with that. But for some reason, I started watching floss tubes, as you do when you start a new, and of course I have everything in my bag. These are the needles, the John James needles. They're very nice. I will talk about needles shortly. As you start something, you start watching, so I've started watching floss tubes, and boy, when you start watching cross-stitching floss tubes and instructional videos, I was, since I didn't know what I was doing, I was watching instructional videos. You start watching, kind of advanced videos. And so I was watching videos about how to do a full coverage piece and parking and yarn and floss control and all this stuff. And some of these pieces are, the full coverage means that you don't see the back at all because there's a stitch in every single hole. And they look like tapestries, and they're beautiful. And, they would be a beautiful, like, pillow or picture or something. Whether I would put them in my house, though, that's the thing. But they were really beautiful. So I'm watching this, and I don't remember who it was. I've just been flipping around. and she was, so I was talking, there, some people use grid marks on their fabric so that it makes it easier because the patterns all have grid marks on them, so it's easy to, 10 by 10 grid to count and things like that. And in the course of a discussion, I think, about grid marks and stuff, the woman said, well, you're going to be working on this for 2 years, so you want to make sure that you're happy with it. And I'm like, 2 years? I don't think I can work on something for 2 years. I mean, it's possible that I could. I can't picture it myself, but you never know. So that started me thinking about how I feel about big projects. And this is not a big project by any stretch of the imagination, this Santa. And it's possible that I'll be done with that by the time I podcast again. But I was thinking about 2 years and whatever, and I realized that I want to do little things that I can finish. And since I was talking about how I thought Christmas was my thing, I ended up getting this pattern. And it's a download from Etsy. Christmas gift tags by Coconut. Cross stitch by Coconut. I found it on Etsy. But anyway, they're just tiny little Christmas trees. And since, as I said, I collect Christmas trees. And these are just put on, that's Pearl banging the table. Stop it. These are just put on, card tags to be like a Christmas tag. I'm not doing that, so don't, well, I don't give very many gifts at Christmas, just to the granddaughters. And I might do something like that, not on paper, something a little more permanent that would be a gifted tag with their name on the back and the date, and maybe and turn it into a Christmas ornament. But I decided I wanted to do something that I could finish. So I went to Joann's. I did not go back to the cross-stitch store, but I will do that. I don't know how the cross-stitch store stays in business, though, because the DMC floss at the cross-stitch store was 75 cents, and the DMC floss at the Joann's was 56 cents, so I went to the store, and I got some Aida. Now, I know about Aida because the people, the Crafty Toads talked about Aida. Aida is a fabric that has holes in it, and the Aida, it was really kind of specifically what I rejected in my first project because, I can do everything, I'm going to use linen. Aida's easier. Take it from me, your first project, you might want to try Aida, because the linen was a little tricky, and not that I got the counts right on the Aida either, don't mistake me, I still can't count. But I'm fine. The Aida is easier. If you like the look of it well enough, then I would go with the Aida. This is a little tip from me, the beginner to the beginner, if you're going to start doing this. The other thing I found was needle threader. I am not a great needle threader. I got this kind of needle threader, and I'm very happy with it. It's a Dritz tapestry needle threader, and I don't see the one I have out. I really like it. I can recommend it. I don't like the ones with the wire because the ones I had broke, and I also bought a different kind where this, where is my regular one? There it is. See, this is slides in your needle. I need a needle cushion for my... This slides in your needle very easily, like that. And then you put your thread through this big hole that you can see and put your thread through, and then you pull it through, and that's how you thread your needle. Now there's another type of needle threader that I also got at Joann's at the same time, where this is more like a hook. and it's open. And I found, and these are very thin because of course they've got to go through the eye of a needle. I found with the hook one that once I got it in, sometimes it twisted a little bit and it wasn't that easy to get out because the hook part would hook on the outside of my needle. So I recommend this if you care. Carolyn told me to get number 26 needles. She sold me these John James needles, which are very nice, and they're very short. And she said that's what I would use because I'm using it in hand and sewing method. I bought more needles because I broke one of those needles. I lost one of those needles, so I bought more needles. I bought 2 different kinds of needles. I bought Dritz tapestry needles. Dritz tapestry needles, which are falling out of the thing, and I need to figure out how to, which I liked very much. But the first ones I used, I bought 2 kinds because that's how I am. I bought the DMC needles from DMC, which are the people who do the floss. Terrible needles. They were terrible needles. First of all, the eye was much smaller, even though they were both 26s. So it was harder to thread. And the inside of the eye seemed to be somewhat rough, and it was like shredding my thread. So I switched to the Dritz needles, and I had no problem. And I don't have the DMC to show you the package because I wasn't thinking, and I got mad at it, and I threw it away. But I like Dritz better, in case you're wondering and you care. Okay, so I got the Ada at Joann's. I got 2 different kinds. I got natural colored, DMC natural colored, which I like a lot, and then I got the Joann's brand in white. And I made some Christmas trees. I made that last night while I was just sitting there. So this will turn into an ornament or something. And I made that too. Could have used one more star maybe, I'm not sure. This had backstitching. I didn't even look at a video on how to backstitch. Now I know how to backstitch in sewing. Whether that's the same in cross stitch, I have no idea. But I did it, and now I'm going to look it up because it said to backstitch with 1 thread, but it's showing up better on the camera than it looks in real life. And this is my favorite. Isn't this cute? Can you see? These are so cute. Now, the reality is in every single one of these, I got my counts off. Just a little. Like, for instance, here at the top of this tree, there's only supposed to be 1 row of green instead of 2 rows. But the way I did this was I did all the yellow first. I did all the little dots, and then I filled in the greens after. And when I was doing the dots, I didn't count right. And so I had an extra row. So I just put an extra row. You know, I'm not going to go through and tell you all the mistakes I made because they turned out cute and I'm not unhappy with them. One mistake I made was I had a chocolate ice cream bar and I got little pieces of chocolate on my thing, so maybe you don't eat while you have your stuff out. Now I'm unraveling my Ada. Maybe you don't do that either. So anyway, I started cross stitching. And I have some finished objects. These are my FOs for the podcast. But I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. This is my favorite. Isn't that fun? And I have 2 more to do. Where's my paper with all? So I have this one on white, which I have to do on the beige, obviously, because it's mostly white with red. That's going to be cute too. And then this one has like a bow on top, and I haven't done it. I'm going to do that one on the white, since I already cut the white out. So I've started cross stitching. So I've started working on my Christmas decorations, my Christmas, whatever I'm going to do with these things, because, you know, I'm in 2 Advent swaps with 2 friends. So I'm going to have Advents to put together at Christmas. I'm going to want to make decorations because I'm planning on putting up my tree. And when I thought about, though, those full coverage pieces, I thought, you know, what would I do for something like that? And it occurred to me that I might want to do Christmas stockings for the granddaughters. That would be huge. Those would be huge projects. But when I tried to figure out what I might do, that was the answer. I might do Christmas stockings for the granddaughters. So that's my making. Now, I think I got a lot done in a week, even though most of it was cross-stitch, because there's something about the knitting I was doing that made me not want to do it. And that always makes me sad and a little nervous. But I am going to figure out where I was with Sammy's sweater and work on her sweater. This is still not good lighting, but that's all right. I'm almost done. I'm going to work on Sammy's sweater and get going with that. And finish my color work on my Ravelry tee, and then I'll be just going great guns with that. I really need a project where I can just sit and knit round and round and round and round, and that soon will be that project, and that'll be good. And work on my cityscape. I have been thinking I need to cast on some socks too, because I haven't had socks on the needles for quite some time. So I'm very bad about writing notes before my podcast, and so if I've forgotten something I should have talked about, I apologize. Dennis put up a clothesline for me this week, and I was in heaven. I had a clothesline about 8 years ago, and right where it was, we ended up with a sinkhole, and so we had to recontour the land and do all this stuff, and the clothesline went down and never went up again, and I've been nagging at him for a while. And I got it, and it was so nice. We washed our sheets and hung them out. Oh, that was the best night. I'll definitely be watching my sheets more often. Oh, it was wonderful. And this is straight off the line. So that was fun. So, poor Dennis with his finger. I feel so bad for him. And now I've got to do the dishes. Normally I don't do the dishes. You guys do not know. I am the laziest, luckiest woman ever. Dennis loves to cook. He cleans the kitchen. The kitchen is his area. It's his domain. He, you know, and within reason, and I mean, you know, there are very few things that he gets denied in the kitchen. If he wants it for his kitchen, he gets it, because I don't want to cook. He does the shopping. I offered to do the shopping. He said, nah, it's better if I do it. I know what I want. Okay. And he usually cleans the kitchen too, because he's got special pans. You got to do all, you know, I mean, this is a big deal. I will be doing the dishes for the next 10 days because he's got this giant thing on his finger. Oh my gosh, poor guy. So anyway, I will go and make him some tea and see how he's feeling. And I guess that's it. I hope you have lots and lots of time to do the crafting that brings you joy. And I will see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.